And let there be, let there be, particles of heat and other ancient things. Primal things. Except one little micro-nano thing that looks like me with brown hair named Andrew rolls itself onto the slimy shore. He's a single cell and still very emotional about the whole experience.
I didn't really come from a very theatrical family. My mother was in the medical profession, and then my father was a basketball player. I think having such a diverse background, I felt was to my detriment for a long time. And then at some point it evolved and I began to kind of use it as an asset.
Andrew was one of my very first students here at SCAD. Even at that point, I think it was obvious that Andrew had a foot in the unique.
He had his hands in everything from the fine arts to design to fashion to the performing arts. Am I surprised by his success? No.
New York has become a place that's more and more difficult to make work. And how Andrew stands out is he is doing everything that is available to him.
Not long ago, I was giving lectures at the Museum of Modern Art. At the same time, I was doing art direction and set design for fashion photo shoots. At the same time, I was directing and writing these off-Broadway avant-garde performances.
I think of him kind of like a Renaissance man. He's able to have his hand creatively in so many different aspects, and he still stays true to communicating his vision.
I knew that he was working on You As We All, and he had a lot on his plate.
There's this building, the Park Avenue Armory, that's become sort of a cultural center here in New York. And last year, I just got an email from this curator, Mayen, who asked if I wanted to develop a new work while in residence at the Park Avenue Armory. So of course I said yes. You know, it feels important to come here. I feel like a lot of the ideas and projects I'm developing, I feel like more robust and sort of responding to the architecture of the space.
How do you create a space for artists to do the best work that they can and to really reach for something that they didn't think was possible?
He really is obsessed with breaking the confines of what storytelling is, but also making it super relatable to an audience.
You can see his eye in the sketches and the costumes and the design. You can really see the fine attention to detail.
He's working very hard to get everything finished with like the biggest imagination possible. You know, it's not just this boring little job. It's this very grand, beautiful, big idea.
It wasn't necessarily, here's my story, here's my script. It was more conceptual, a different way of performing and storytelling.
That's really maybe one of my greatest interests, is just sort of throwing myself into experiences in which I sink or swim. And I've learned how to swim. The least interesting thing is when I have an idea and then we all execute the idea. It's more about finding interesting people that come from different backgrounds and putting them in the same room together and see what happens.
And each person has been picked so specifically. There's something like so incredibly unique to them, to whatever they're bringing to the table.
His network is mind-blowing, and he always brings together SCAD alums in a laboratory environment.
The way he's able to gather people around him actually in itself is a great talent.
The new play I'm working on has 15 people, and my casting concept was I really wanted to have the stage populated with people who would, in any other circumstance, never be on stage with each other. So we have an opera singer with a downtown dancer, with a priest from my local church in Brooklyn, people who would never have met otherwise. And there's something interesting that happens when you put all of these different people with different life experiences and different worldviews together. Once the group is curated, whether that's a team of assistants or whether that's a cast, everyone's ideas are honored and everyone is expected to contribute in their own specific way.
I think he's really also turned on to the fact that he doesn't know what the end product is going to be. And he actually uses the collaborators that he has on his team to help that vision come into fruition.
It's really amazing to see that innovation, to think differently.
It's like truly a unique experience and can feel really great because you can see how many people's ideas are melding together and you're like, okay, this is amazing. Like, look what we did. We did this together.
He would just give like the most minute details and instructions to the actors and designers working on US We All. Based on what they would choose, it would just blossom to this like huge constructed flower.
The opera US We All begins with this big Baroque fantasy. So all of the costumes are larger than life, they're opulent, they're full of beautiful patterns and colors. All of the light is brightly colored, it's this candy-colored palette.
I think there's always this element of excess. There's a lot of over the top, but realistically the stage is very clean. He always has this level of restraint. He has this really great balance of just enough excess.
One of the first important theater pieces I saw was Anne Bogart directing Chuck Mee's play, Bob Rauschenberg America. And I think it was the first time I had really seen abstract theater, that there was a performance in which the formal qualities of art making were more important than a narrative storytelling. And for me, it was just like open my eyes to other ways of thinking and other ways of working.
So you have not so much story, but a lot of ideas actually embodied by people. This was a show that was pastiche with a purpose. It's something where we were both being affectionate and using all of these conventions in order to say something that's relevant for our own moment.
In one scene in particular, all of the costumes are abandoned, the backdrop is pulled down, all of the colored light goes away, and we just have a very cold white light that takes the stage. It's sort of a theatrical trope that I've been playing with, this idea of juxtaposing the elaborate and the maximalist with something very internal and something very philosophical.
And that contrast, I think, is really important to what he's saying with his work. Pare things down to absolutely nothing, and then you finally get to see things as they are.
We have these characters named Hope and Virtue and Death, and over the course of the performance, we eventually find that everyone throws off their garments and they're still trying to find themselves, what their archetype might mean in today's world.
That was such a huge part of the opera, getting to see the costume as such a harmonious aspect in telling the story.
We only had 2 months to get a lot of work done, and I think that is a testament of definitely coming from the same backgrounds and having that strong foundation that SCAD sets up for us.
And so you can kind of reference your education and be like maybe we should use that technique based on what we learned here.
When we met in New York, we just felt like such kindred spirits right away, and we could talk about how we've grown.
Working with Andrew was seriously one of the most profound things, I think, in my young artist's life.
You are learning about so many different things just from working with him.
For him, it's the full vision. There's nothing that's left untouched.
His productions and his work is an extension of his soul.
He is a lifelong artist. That is his deal.
And it's an experience that I wouldn't trade for anything else.
And there's people that you come in contact with, but there's very few that really stick out. A lot of it is repeated. Like I'll meet a Jessica and I was friends with Jessica in high school, and then I'll go down the line and meet another Jessica, but her name will be Rebecca. But I really have only met one Andrew.
Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen, it's true. that you're split from one being, from one chromosome. Question mark. Are we not us each all split from one sin?